Hello and welcome to the It's Later Than You Think podcast. My name is Patrick. I am your host, and I am so glad that you are here, wherever and however you are listening in. This is the podcast where we talk about life, about our careers, our hobbies, our passion projects, and how we realize that we only get one go around and it's not too late to take advantage of the moments that we do have. Whether you're getting in shape, whether you're switching careers, whether you are finally doing the thing that you said you would do. This is the place to hear other stories. And today we have another one of those. My guest today is a former Division I and professional athlete, recovering addict, and brain cancer survivor. Talking about finding meaning through adversity. You're going to hear from Michael Bugary, and he is going to fill us in on his journey over the last 15 years. I hope you enjoy my conversation with Michael. All right, so I am so excited to introduce my guest this week, Michael Bugary, who is an author, motivational speaker, and professional athlete, to name a few. Thank you so much for being here, Michael.
Thank you for having me, Patrick.
I was really glad that you reached out. Your story is fascinating, and I'm really thrilled that you could be here, as well as excited for you to share your story with the listeners today.
Thank you. I'm grateful as well.
You do have a very inspirational story, as I just mentioned. Can you share with the listeners of this podcast some struggles that you've had to overcome throughout your life?
Yeah. I've had a few. So I think the first big struggle was when I got a career-ending injury in my second professional baseball season, playing for the Boston Red Sox organization. I think it was so challenging for me because I invested so much of my identity into being a baseball player. And it was almost like an addiction for me, in a sense where it became like my source of validation and attention. And I needed that externally. And when I got hurt and I was told that I couldn't play, I just felt like I lost my worth, and I just didn't know how to cope. And that goes on to the next struggle of I turned to opiates and other drugs and alcohol to kind of cope with that depression that I was feeling. And what I really wanted to do was numb my pain, right? And I think there's a pattern in my life that we'll talk about, is I always felt like I needed something for something, and that's what that did for me. And then as that progressed, to a little bit, harder drugs, as the drug addiction usually does, I was diagnosed with a medulloblastoma brain tumor, which it was about the size of a lacrosse ball in my cerebellum, which is it's just a very rare cancerous brain tumor. And yeah, I had to have multiple surgeries and really, really intense chemotherapy and radiation. And that was a challenge in the sense that, most of my issues had been mental at that time. And that when they added the physical element into it, I couldn't cope with like all the things that I took for granted, right? Like just having to walk normal, having just all these side effects that I was dealing with. It just added a whole new element to it. And as challenging as all those things were for me, Patrick, there's the biggest struggle and the challenge that I have, and I still deal with today, is me, right? I'm my biggest problem. I mean, because all those bad, things, my baseball and the addiction and the cancer, all that is caused by me. All the poor choices that I have made over the years, and so that's why it's the disease of me. I say in the title of my book, and when I talk, because I am, and I will always be my biggest problem.
How long was this time frame between when you were with the Red Sox organization to then the alcohol and drug abuse to then cancer?
Yeah, so it was pretty much back to back to back. It was all in a row.
Oh, gosh.
So I got drafted in 2009, and then I got hurt in 2011 is when I got let go, and then 2012 to 2015 was my brain cancer. So the whole experience, there's a lot in between where I went to treatment, ups and downs and things like that. But that those years right there from 2010 to 2015, those 5 years were a lot. It was all kind of compounded onto each other, and I did a lot of avoidance and kept a lot of things in during that time.
I imagine that's a definitely example of like, when it rains, it pours. That was just like just a string of
Sure.
very difficult experiences that you had to go through.
Yeah.
So let's get in a little bit to you've mentioned it, The Disease of Me, and the book that you are working on. How did that come to take shape then? How did you actually got the idea you've reflected and thought like, oh, this is on me?
Yeah. Well, I had a couple, I call them spiritual experiences where I had the realization where I, realized what a jerk I am, that's the biggest thing. And I think too, like when I talk about all those bad things that happened, when I say things that happened to me, this and that, when I look at it that way, and I gained a lot from them, but when I look at it that way, I miss the real victim in it all. It's the people that I hurt, right? My family that I stole time from and just completely wrecked, and all the great relationships, anyone who ever cared about me. I was like a tornado that went through everybody's lives around me, and I never really saw that. And so when I think of things from the perspective of me, I fail to realize those things, and I have to keep those things close because that's what I do. And so I got the idea of the disease of me through the addiction. I think, and I want to be careful how I say this, is that I don't see my addiction as a disease. A lot of people do, and there's science behind it, and I understand that, and I'm not trying to knock on that. It's important, and some people have to. Just for me, it doesn't work that way because, I would hear people say, well, if you had cancer, you wouldn't treat them that way. Why should you treat an addict that way? And well, I've had both, and I didn't rob anybody to get more chemotherapy. You know what I mean? Like and addiction kind of tore my family apart, and cancer brought them together. So, and that in a sense where also my addict behavior began long before a drink or drug, right? So the disease is me, right? Drugs and alcohol are a symptom of my, they just make me worse. And when I start using them, I can't stop, right? So I have to realize that when you take drugs and alcohol out of my life, that I still have all these character defects, right? I'm still selfish, egotistical, judgmental, whatever. I have a long list of them. I'm still those things. And I have to work really hard now, even sober, on a daily basis to change the way that I think and act. Because living that way really has led to nothing but self-destruction for me.
Now, when you had the tumor, now is some of this, you said that kind of was due to some of your past actions. What do you exactly mean by that?
So in my desperation to fix my arm, I bought human growth hormone and other anabolic steroids and things, and I used them. I bought them from a shady source, and I used them without any medical supervision, with not understanding that I had history of those things in my past, and the way that I used them could affect me. So, I mean, I can't medically prove that I caused it, but I'm like 99% sure that that's what did it. Probably the drugs didn't help either, but yeah. So I think that was what caused my tumor. And so, when I came to that realization that I caused that myself, I think, and you talked about too, those 5 years were challenging for me, but the couple years after that, I think were even harder for me after my treatments. Cause I now developed all these horrible side effects with the treatment, right? Cause they were just trying to save my life. My tumor was so rare, and the treatment that they had to give me was really, it was nasty stuff, and it left me with just permanent nerve damage all over my body. And there was times where I just didn't think I would ever be to live normal again. I went from this athlete to not being able to functionally walk and do these things. And that took a real big toll on me.
Yeah. Have you been able to give yourself some grace at least? And I asked that just due to, especially with the addiction, the drugs and alcohol. I mean, I if you may not be aware, but I gave up alcohol 14 months ago, and I never had a dependency on it. It was just that I was tired of the hangovers and the binge drinking. And so, but I know what alcohol and drugs can do, and how sometimes like myself, I didn't have a stop button either. And so I just was able, fortunately, to wake up and be like, okay, I don't want to be hungover anymore. I'm not drinking. But I also give myself grace knowing that, like, okay, some of that stuff, stuff that was said, stuff that was done, that's not necessarily who I am. It's just that.
No, no, I know exactly what you're talking about, and absolutely, I have. In order
Good.
to be as comfortable as a person that I am now,
Yeah.
and I love who I am, I had to come to terms with that, and I
Yeah.
think that comes to personal responsibility, right? I have to say these things because they're true,
Yeah.
and I have to keep the door open to the past. It doesn't mean I have to. That's acceptance, right? Acceptance is
Yes.
not approving it; it's just acknowledging it happened, right? I have to
Yep.
accept that. And when I can accept it, then I can move forward. And yeah, there's that self, deprivation, that why me stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I get that. And for me, it's simple, right? Why? Because I like to, get high and avoid my problems. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'd rather not
Yeah.
deal with stuff. But that's why I am the way I am. And
Yeah.
now that has to transform to why was I spared, right? Why am I so lucky that I went through that all these things that should have killed me, and I did all these things, and why do I have all the things that I have now? And that why I transformed it into what am I going to do about it, right?
Yeah.
Because I can't change that stuff. So what can I do
Right.
with my time now? How can I make living amends to the people around me? Because and the more I dabble in self pity and worry about, I regret the things that I've done, the more I'm living in the past. The more I'm living in my disease, because all I'm going to do is just then take care of me. But if I'm able to open up and be of service to others, and do something about what I have, the gifts that I've been given, then I can change, and that ultimately helps me.
Yeah. So the title of the book, "The Disease of Me," is that
Yeah.
something that's in process or?
So yes, I've written it,
Okay.
and I'm in the works of debating whether to have a literary agent or
Okay.
self-publish, and I got it being edited right now.
Great.
And so, I thought, like, hey, I'm just going to write this 300-page book, and it's going to be done. And I did that, and then I realized there's a little more to it, So,
Yeah.
but
That's
yeah, so
exciting.
it's done. I was really proud of myself when I finished it. There was a time where I didn't think that I could, because I was addicted to Adderall too, and there was a time where I didn't think that I could do anything without it, right? Let alone go back to school and get a 4.0 and or write a book, all these amazing things. And so, yeah, like you're saying, I credit myself with a lot of those things too. But I also know with my disease, right, is that if I give myself too much credit, I'll take advantage of it, and then
Sure.
so I have this, I think it's intuition, right? That's one of the gifts I've been given, introspection, to where I know who I am. Like I know who I am, I accept who I am, and good, bad, and the ugly.
That's great to hear as far as that realization, knowing where your strengths lie and how you can put forward something out into the world. Which leads me to my next question. You have experience as a motivational speaker.
Yes. Yeah, so it kind of came to me like a lot of things, I guess, in my life, serendipitously, like on accident. I went back to school, and being part of a recovery, you're asked to speak a lot, and I was asked to speak at this rehab. But like my first time, I had done it in front of like 200 patients, and I'm thinking, hey, I used to pitch in front of thousands of people, right? Like, this is how hard can this be, And so I did it, and I went up there with that confidence like I used to have, and I sucked. I like to joke around. After I was done, a star was born, but no, not at all. But I'm my own biggest critic, right? I'm a self-loather, I guess you can say sometimes. But after I was done speaking, and just the way people came up to me and just shared their message and related to me, and we had that connection, and I just realized, man, like how powerful that moment was for me. Because one of the things that I miss most about baseball is playing in front of those people, and challenge myself on the edge. So from that perspective, that's the thing I like most about speaking is I get to challenge myself in front of people, because I wasn't great at it. I'm still getting better at it. This is all relatively new to me, and it's something that I found purpose in it, right? And so, but I think the most important thing I get out of it is those moments at the end, right? That I can help somebody, because you know helping other people and being outside of myself is like the vaccine to my disease, right? Because that's what gets me outside of me. And if I can share my message and my story, like I said earlier, what to do about it. I've been given this story, I've been given this gift, and how do I share that message, and how do I bring that to the world in a positive way?
Yeah, that's a great message to be able to share. And part of we kind of talked about this before we hit record, but having a variety of topics on a podcast or all the different podcasts that exist in the world, that there's always someone out there, something out there that someone else hasn't heard. And that, whether that's a motivational story or something that's funny that or something they learn that they didn't know about, I think that's really beneficial. And for you to be able to share your message with the world, I think is very powerful because it's something that people can relate to. Maybe they haven't gone through ABC, but they've most likely hit one of those. And
so that's what I say, Pat. I call it the triple crown of adversity. I guess the only award that I won, right? It's right. So we all play. I mean, we all know somebody in our lives, either directly or indirectly, that has been impacted by sports, addiction, or cancer. I mean, we all do, right? And I've been through the extremes of all three of them, so I can relate to somebody in some aspect. So, I find myself speaking to a very wide range of audiences, and I love that I can go into this space. Like, for example, I was accepting an award at University Hospitals one morning, and in front of this fancy banquet, and I spoke, and I can feel like the group conscience in the way that I speak. And then that same night, I went to a prison and spoke to 200 plus inmates.
Oh, wow.
Completely different opposite effect, but the same effect from the audience. The fact that I had that range it's about like being authentic, but it's that I realized that how many people that I can actually help, and I'm just so grateful that I've been given the gifts to be able to do it.
That's great to hear. You've got a therapy dog.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
How did you end up with him? And also talk about the work you do with the Pet Pals organization.
Yeah. So Lingo is my therapy dog. And, I really believe he saved my life. And I think it's one of those, his name's Lingo, one of those God think moments where Lingo was born the same month as my cancer was removed. Right. So I'll be 10 years in remission in August, and he just turned 10 recently. So, and I met Lingo like when that time I was telling you about right after my cancer, when I was going through that treatment, when I was in a really bad place, and I just moved back to California with my family, and my mom worked at the military base, and the military base there just adopted Lingo as a therapy dog. It was for the soldiers. It's the Defense Language Institute. That's why his name's Lingo, after language. I wish I came up with a name, but I didn't.
Okay.
Right? So, but traditionally, and I think the military base treated him well. He was really well loved, and I don't want to say anything bad about it because they were great. But I think traditionally, when a facility like a hospital or a police station, whatever it may be, when they adopt the dog, they assign it a handler, right? Someone to go home with after, and someone to just keep that consistency that a dog needs. And Lingo didn't have that. Lingo would be taken home on the weekends sometimes by some of the civilians that worked there, but oftentimes he would be staying at the base, and soldiers would be responsible to let him out. And if you get a soldier that doesn't particularly enjoy dogs or something, he might stay extended period in time in a cage. And I think that lack of consistency was taking a toll on him. And my mom, being one of the top employees there, saw that with Lingo, and she knew that she had a son at home who was hurting, and I think she thought maybe that we could help each other. And she brought him home one weekend, and the first time we bonded immediately. But the first time he was over at my house, he's not one of those dogs where he gets all excited when he wants to go out, right? He looks at you with those big sad eyes, and he lays on the couch, right? I think that guilt is worse. But I remember the first time that I took him out to the park, and I was watching him, run around and having the time of his life. And I got some fresh air and the sun, and I wasn't thinking about the past or thinking about the future. I was in the moment, and I was present, and I just felt better, right? And Lingo was the first really good thing to happen to me in so long, and it was the first positive. I guess I had so much. I don't know if it was betrayal or just all the people in my life. I either burned their bridges, or being out of sports, they stopped talking to me. So I just felt like I was abandoned in a sense, and so alone. And bringing Lingo into my life, he just showed me that unconditional love. And I knew that in order to keep him, I had to keep working on myself. I had to get out of this house. I had to start really tackling the issues of my life. And soon I became his handler, and then eventually, when he was ready to retire, I was able to officially adopt him. And I promised that I would continue his work as a therapy dog, to help other people in the way that he helped me. And so when
That's
we moved
amazing.
to Ohio, right after the pandemic, I decided to go through some therapy dog training and all the necessary courses. And I set up an interview at university hospitals because I saw online they had a really great therapy dog program, and it just connected. The university hospitals, they're amazing. They have just an amazing program, amazing dogs, and Lingo still he still helps me every day. Like my main reasoning behind going to the hospital was my type of tumor was so rare that it very, very, very rarely happens to adults. Like I don't know percentages, but it's very, very
Okay.
small. But it happens pretty commonly in children, right?
Okay.
So I think as I mentioned, I have some culpability in the things that I did to go through the hell that I went through, and I just thinking about an innocent child going through that, it stuck with me and it kind of bothered me. So I thought, hey, what better way than me to bring Lingo to play with the kids or pet them and but I didn't realize how much it would help me, Patrick. Right? Like I didn't realize, when we go there and Lingo jumps up on the bed, when the kids pet him and they're smiling and having a good time. I don't really talk to the kids; they're just enjoying the dad, right? Who I
Yeah.
talk to is the parents and their families, right? And so,
Yeah.
and then oftentimes you see the mom start to cry or whatever because who knows when the last time they saw their child smile, right?
Mhm.
Going through all this stuff and we talk about Lingo's story or we talk about their pets at home, right? We always share dog photos and things and it makes me think of my family and my mom and the things that I did and the things that I need to work on. And it really helps me. And sometimes those thoughts are difficult to have, but they're necessary because they help me change it. And I can only have those thoughts when I help somebody else without any expectation of something in return.
Sure that is appreciated more than from those families and those children as well. That's incredible. What kind of dog?
Oh, see, he's a half boxer, a quarter
Okay.
husky and a quarter Alaskan
Oh,
Malamute. He's real tall. He's close to 100 pounds.
okay.
And that's not the extent to of what we do now. This would be our fourth year, and I'm in the process of working on starting a speaking bureau for them. So what I do is I go out if they have somebody that's interested in therapy dogs or organization. Lingo and I go out and we speak, and I always love when I have Lingo when I speak because if I bomb, I can just wave my hands down and say, "Here's my dog," So I just take some of the pressure off me, But
Yeah.
we go out and speak. We speak a lot. We share our story to other whatever whoever it may be that wants to hear it, and we're starting that. And I now visit patients at I think I avoided the adult cancer center for a while because of the things that I went through. But what I learned is that doing that, though, going there now, that helps me more than anyone because it's not about Lingo, it's about me, right? Because Lingo just gets me in the door. And then now that I can sit and talk with these patients and share my story about what I went through, and they see how I look now and what I've gone through, and it gives them hope right in that moment, and that they can not only get through it, but they can thrive afterwards. And that, I've had so many heartfelt, teared conversations in those
Yeah.
rooms that have just fundamentally changed me. And that's all with Lingo, and like I said, that's the antithetical to my disease.
Sure. It's incredible. What is one piece of advice, or you might have a few, you could
Yeah,
offer from everything that you've been through?
yeah. This is always a tough question for me
It's a deep
because
question, I'm sure.
yeah, yeah, but I also it's tough for me because I don't feel like I'm qualified to give advice. Everything I got my hands on, I kind of crashed and burned on. So it's like. But at the same time, and the way that I do it, especially in my book, I write a book. I write a letter to my younger self. Right? That's what would I say to my younger self? That's the best way that I can share advice. And I think you see it now. We kind of evolved into or revolving into a me-centric society, right? Where we see these things on social media, and we have all these ways to. It's about me, and this, and it becomes a source of validation, right? And to get from outside sources, and I chased that too for a long time. My pursuit of athletic glory and validation led me down to a really bad path. And the reason why is because I was just never comfortable with who I was. Right. I just never was willing to show up and just be myself. Right. And my advice is our worth comes from within. Right. Us to always come from within. And the only way that I can do that is be comfortable with myself. And in order, and this whole process for me has been a mission of self discovery,
Yeah.
right? And so how, how I do that is by some of the things that we were talking about before. I just can't be afraid to show up. I can't be afraid to put myself out there. I can't be afraid to fail. I can't be afraid I can't make these scenarios in my head about the worst thing that's going to happen and decide not to do it. I just have to show up and just try my best. And when I do that, I often find that the outcome is a little bit better than the one that I create. And
Oh yeah.
when I'm myself, I learn a little something more each time, and through every failure. And right, I don't remember any of the good times. I remember all the bad times. So I think that fear of not failing. And then one more, I said I was bad at this, but now I'm offering all this advice, right? So one more thing, right? Like if you're feeling down and inside about yourself, and what we're help somebody else. No matter what you're going through, just go out and do something for somebody, and just see how you feel afterwards. Even if you don't feel it's possible, I know it works for me. I've been the hardest times when I did something for somebody else, I put everything in perspective for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's so true. It comes down to who I talked about this with a guest recently about making sure you're comparing yourself with yourself. That's where back to the social media comment and the imposter syndrome of like, look at everyone else is doing. Well, that's them. Like, what are you doing to improve? What are you doing to make a difference? And so that's what you've done a great job of, as far as like, okay, you have to acknowledge the past, but here's where I am now. What can I do to make someone else's life a little better? Which then in turn will make things better for you, because it's the feeling we get from helping others and being selfless instead of selfish. And so I think that kind of then comes for full circle.
Yeah, absolutely.
With all that. So yes, you did have some good advice for sure. And it's hard it's human condition to, and I think everyone's like this, where part of what you mentioned as far as like the negativity goes, that's just, everyone remembers the worst times more, the most embarrassing times in your life. Those are way more front and center than the good times. And it kind of reminds me of recently, I don't know if you heard this in the news, but Scotty Scheffler, who just last week was talking about before he even was in the Open, he talked about how winning is a fleeting feeling for him. So after, he wins a tournament, within, what do you say, like a couple hours, the feeling's kind of gone. But then you harp on those negative aspects of it. Sure. But that's just how people are. And it's hard to get away from that, but it's important to, again, come in kind of back to the idea of the podcast, is to look forward. It's important to look back, but also look forward and to realize that, hey, we've got limited time here, and enjoy it for what it is, and try to, I think, be the best person you can be.
How do I be present every day? Right. Like how do I be present? And there's that, like, and I write about this too. There's that fallacy of, you'll notice I always say, like, I write about it because I always like to remind everybody I got a book coming out. That's the little parts of my disease, right? Yeah. But no, it's almost like a fallacy, that saying, like, to live like you're dying, right? And because, I mean, I've been dying a few times, and it's easy to do for a day, and if you're really like focused and committed to it, you can probably do it for a week or two. But pretty soon you're going to be on your couch eating Netflix. It's just how all of us are. There's too many things that are going on, right? And the hardest thing about it is, how do I remain present every day, right? How do I just show up, and I have to do certain routines and things. And what really helped me with that was rebuilding my body back, because I had this nerve damage that I had all over my body, peripheral neuropathy in my nerve endings. I didn't have space. I was what's the word? I didn't, my spatial awareness wasn't very good. So I would run into things, and it would hurt so bad because I had hypersensitivity too. And I had to learn how to be really conscious of my movements, right? I learned to be purposeful, and the way that just how I had to learn about my body and that mind body connection, and how it turned to my thoughts, right? How to be conscious with that, and just to really analyze the way that I talk and things. And that just helps me be more present every day. And, so it's almost, and I kind of came to the solution where I just, instead of live like I'm dying, I just try to live like people are watching me, right? Right. I live like, and if you have a high faith in God, you believe that people are watching you anyway. So, right. So if I believe in my private moments and my private times that somebody's watching me, I typically tend to do the right thing. Right. So
Yeah,
that's how I try to do it.
I like that. Good point. Before we wrap things up, I'd love to give you a few moments to plug whatever you would like, as far as either your book, your website,
Yeah.
whatever you would like.
Yeah, so my book is in the process. It's called The Disease of Me. I was hoping to have it out by the end of the year, but I think it might be a little bit longer than that. So, but you can find that information on my website at www.michaelbugary.com. That's Bugary. You can find me on Facebook. I'm more active on Facebook. I have other videos and the things that I do around with Lingo and the community. I have an Instagram, which is more of a personal thing, which is all my other dogs and stuff I post on there mostly. I got a bunch of them, but yeah, that and please, if you want to hear me speak, there's ways to book me on my website. If you want to just send me a message and talk about some of the things that's my goal is how I can help other people and just by sharing the story, because like I said, ultimately helping other people helps me. So any questions, reach out to me on Facebook, Instagram, my website, and I'd love to have a chat with you.
Well, Michael, thank you so much for taking some time today to tell your story.
Yeah, thank you, Patrick.
Well, that was sure an incredible story. And I want to thank Michael again for coming on the podcast and sharing his whole journey with us. Feel free to go check out his work, michaelbugary.com. And as he mentioned, you can find him on social media as well. I hope you all have a great rest of your week, and we will see you next time.